Story 1. I have tried to stop letting financial worries keep me from being generous with others. Nothing huge, just picking up a tab here and there. I find the generosity always comes back around, and often I receive more than I give. My finances are not any better, but my experience of life with what I have got is. Story 2. Setting up a 401k as soon as it was available. I was only 23 or so, but I have seen the benefits over the years. My coworker waited 6 years because he did not trust or understand 401k plans and compound interest. Story 3. Selling our house in California right before the real estate crash and moving to a less expensive part of the country changed my kids' lives significantly. They both graduated from university debt-free as a result of the profit from the sale. I am so grateful that they are able to build their futures free from the crushing weight of education debt. Story 4. I was a huge fan of Next Computers. At the time, I usually received an annual bonus, which I typically used to pay off credit card debt or buy something my wife wanted. One year, we did not need to do so, so we planned to put it into savings. Then suddenly, Steve Jobs was back at Apple, and he was bringing his next team with him. I managed to convince my wife to invest half of the bonus in Apple and save the rest. The stock has split a few times since then, but we still have it and plan to hold on to it until we retire in about 5 years. Story 5. Starting my credit growth journey on my 18th birthday allowed me to save thousands of dollars on every loan I have taken out. Story 6. Immediately contribute the amount needed to get the full match on your 401k plan. Then increase your contributions by 1% each year, 2% if possible, until you reach the Internal Revenue Service contribution limit. Your raises each year will still be reflected as an increase in your paycheck, so you will not notice the extra savings missing from your monthly budget. Within 10 years of entering the workforce, you will be a maximum contributor with over $100,000 in savings. That $100,000 alone in an index fund will grow enough to fund your entire modest retirement. Everything else you save for the rest of your life will improve your standard of living and allow you to retire earlier. Story 7. I started working with a trustworthy financial planner in my 40s. Up to that point, I was living paycheck to paycheck despite a 6-figure income. It took some tough love from my planner, but eventually I learned to budget, plan, and invest appropriately. I went from possibly struggling in my 70s to what now looks like a comfortable, though not opulent, retirement in a few years. I encouraged all of my grown children to start with a planner in their 20s so they can hopefully avoid some of my mistakes. Story 8. Paid off my student loan as soon as possible, 10 years. Now I have no debt aside from my mortgage. It feels good to have my paycheck to myself after the government takes most of it. Story 9. Paid off all debts before letting lifestyle creep erode my income. Staying in debt for instant gratification spending is what keeps many employed people poor. Social media has led many to believe others are financially successful at a young age without making sacrifices. This is simply not true. Story 10. Turned $8,000 into $80,000 years ago via Bitcoin. It was not so much smart, I guess, as a dumb gamble that paid off. I never traded it again after that. Story 11. I started using a high-yield savings account instead of a regular savings account at my bank a few years ago. I went from earning 0.01% to earning 3.75% at first, and then 4.35% at the height of the post-pandemic rate increases. Story 12. Automatic payments and separate accounts for bills and savings. Get paid into account A. Bills come out of account B. Savings is account C. Transfer money directly into account B every time I get paid and let bills be paid from there automatically. I never think about my bills now, and they never go unpaid. I also totaled up my bills as a high estimate each month. For the sake of a round number, my bills are $5,000 per month. Each time I get paid, I put $2,500 in account B and don't think about it. This amount is over what my bills actually are, so I have also accumulated a nest egg that has covered unexpected expenses. Automatically transfer money into account C and let the savings grow. Use high-interest accounts to earn additional money from interest. Story 13. Buying real estate early forced me to save, build equity, and open doors to other investment opportunities. What about you? Story 14. I know this technique has a name, but I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. Basically, you put your money into 3 envelopes: savings, emergency, and whatever is left is petty cash. There are some percentages involved, but I forgot the specifics. My savings and emergency fund make up about 60% of my wages. The envelopes are mostly figurative now, but ever since I learned about this saving technique from a men's magazine, it has never steered me wrong. Story 15. Bottoms-up budgeting. Every dollar has a job. If a dollar does not have a job, you will wonder where it went. Have dedicated categories for home and utilities, groceries, insurance, savings, fund money, and non-monthly expenses. Story 16. I predicted that the Phoenix housing market would grow based on the types of posts I saw in the Phoenix subreddit in 2019. I had watched the same thing happen in Portland in 2014 and 2015. We had planned to move to Phoenix in 2020, but were second-guessing ourselves once coronavirus disease 2019 hit. I told my wife, if we don't move now, we might not be able to afford to buy a house. We took the risk and bought a house in a really great area at 2.99% interest. Some houses on our street sell for nearly $1 million now, though ours is one of the more affordable ones in our neighborhood. I actually think it benefits us being one of the more affordable houses in a desirable area. The equity we have will undoubtedly help us for the rest of our lives. On top of that, I had purchased a large amount of Dogecoin for fun in 2017 and sold it in 2021. It paid for a good chunk of the pool we had built. Story 17. Deposit all income in a single account, then allocate a household salary for our month-to-month expenses. The difference is saved each month and funds retirement, emergency funds, and larger expenses we choose to cover. Story 18. Getting a financial advisor helped me set up a Roth individual retirement account, which gets much better returns than a 401k plan. We also set up a high-yield savings account that earns $80 a month just for sitting there. At the end of the day, the money I have that allows me to have these accounts and feel like they are actually doing something is because my grandfather died and left me an inheritance. He knew I had a hard childhood and set me up. Story 19. Opening a health and human services account and setting up automatic deposits each week, and letting my father take over my investment account, the smartest money manager I know. Story 20. Spending within my means. I have never had debt, and it has likely saved me tens of thousands of dollars over the years. Story 21. Hiring a professional to manage our money. I barely think about it at all now, only a few times a year when we meet. The 1% we pay has been well worth it. Story 22. Automatiser des virements pour l'épargne et l'investissement dès le jour de la paie de mon salaire. Je me paie d'abord, je paie les factures ensuite. Story 23. I took DraftKings free money that was intended to entice gamblers and bet on Jamar Chase. I won $2,000. Story 24. Never had that issue. Is that a thing? I typically make bad financial decisions that change my life for the worse. Isn't that how life works? Story 25. We had a big tax return and I received a nice bonus in 2000. We paid off our credit card and our car and vowed never to go into debt again. We eventually paid off our house, and when we moved, we bought a house for what our old one was worth. For 25 years, I have not paid interest to anyone except for our home for a couple of years. Story 26. Quit my toxic job, rolled my 401k into an individual retirement account, and traded actively. Managed to make my salary tax-free, one step closer to retirement. Story 27. Married a woman 26 years ago who was much wealthier than I. I am still in love, and her net worth remains greater than mine. Story 28. I have never had a negative bank account. It impacted my life for 20 years because I did not spend more than I had. Seeing people buying and traveling was painful for a while, but now I can do it too without going into debt. Peace of mind is priceless. Story 29. Small and ongoing. Learning to cook and consistently taking care of my health. Major and long-term, saving to buy a house before the pandemic, and then switching to a single car at the beginning of it. Story 30. I received a substantial insurance settlement when the electric utility company burned my house down. It legitimately changed my life. Story 31. I left a full-time stable job for what was supposed to be a 6-month contract job. 6 years later, I am still at the company, making the most money I have ever made. Taking that chance accelerated the progression of my career to a place I could have never imagined. Story 32. Max out my retirement. I hardly have money for my hobbies, but I have over $300,000 saved in my mid-30s. Between my $401,000 plan, individual retirement accounts, and my pension, I should be able to retire by age 55. Story 33. Figuring out credit cards. All my monthly bills are tied to a card that builds up reward points. I pay it off twice a month, so I never accrue interest. It was surprising how quickly the points added up. Story 34. Buying a new construction townhouse in San Diego in 2014, when I was 24 years old for $289,000. All my friends and family told me I was buying at the top of the market and that I should wait. Story 35. I am in my 50s, so I will put this in order. Getting a job and working hard and smart without a degree. Monitoring sites for deals. Really simple syndication was a game changer. Getting divorced, which led to bankruptcy. Learning the credit card game. I am in the best financial shape I have ever been. The judge ruled in my divorce that she gets 40% of my retirement, so I am still figuring out number 5 and not retiring for a while. Story 36. Received a decent sum from some life insurance policies. Bought a new car, paid cash in full, and put the rest in a managed investment account. It has grown $17,000 in 3 months. Story 37. In my late 30s, by the time I had any real savings and some background in economics, I decided to learn about investing and do it myself. I retired at 50. Story 38. I was able to make a simple component part that did not have any existing market options, buy in bulk for about $1, create retail packaging, make necessary component modifications, and sell on eBay for $12 to $20 each. After fees, postage, and raw goods cost, I was making about $7 per sale on eBay. I sold about 800 units in 8 months, saved for a new used car that gave me reliable transportation, and moved to a new city with better opportunities. Last year, I made almost 20 times my salary from that job 13 years ago. Story 39. Started maxing out my 401k and individual retirement account contributions in my mid to late 30s. Bought Apple stock right after the housing crash. Story 40. Paying off my debt that I have been carrying for 3 to 5 years. Every dollar I spent on debt likely has cost me $2 to $5 over the years. My monthly payments are almost zero now, so I have more money free to save and spend. Story 41. Tossing change into some dividend-earning stocks. Traditional wisdom is to max your individual retirement account and 401k plans, but I couldn't realistically do that. Just tossing money into some stocks gave me more incentive to save. Watching it grow was addictive compared to doubling down on debt or doing anything else with it. Little things made me think. For example, I would think about buying fast food, then decide not to and instead add more stocks to grow these dividends. In the end, it kept growing and eventually eclipsed my debt, so I sold it all and paid off all my debt. Now I'm debt-free. I'm sure putting the cash directly toward the debt would have been the better financial option numbers-wise, but it was easier for me to stick with it the way I did. Story 42. Got 5 bitcoins from the Bitcoin faucet, then forgot about them until I was going through a divorce. My ex does not know. Story 43. Not so much money as career. I said, I am going to learn this programming language that no one learned in school that seems kind of popular. It led to working at a startup that had some great acquisition terms. The smartest pure financial move I made was saying, I am going to take that windfall and dollar cost average it into the market. Yes, I know better gains if you lump sum, but I did not have the guts for that. So I dollar cost averaged over time until I was invested and let it ride since around 2012. At this point, I have made more in gains than I have in actual income. Story 44. We moved a couple of times. Each time, we made a significant amount of money from the sale of the house while moving into a better one. Now, we have money in the bank and no debt other than a car payment and our current mortgage. Story 45. listening to my friend around 2010 talk about a new type of cryptocurrency called Bitcoin and how important it was to mine it and save it. Story 46. Paying off my graduate school loans within a year of graduating was tough but worth it to be debt-free. Story 47. Avoid lifestyle creep by automating your investments and maintaining the same level of spending as your discretionary income increases over time. Story 48. Buying our apartment just before the coronavirus pandemic and renovating it during. It has now nearly doubled in price. Also, slowing down lifestyle creep. Story 49. Starting investing fairly early and keeping it extremely simple. In equities, 3 positions: Vanguard Total Stock Market ETF, Vanguard Total International Stock ETF, and Berkshire Hathaway Class B. On bonds, buy and hold to duration, never trade or buy bond funds. I cannot overstate how simple and effective this is at building wealth. I am nearly 70 and have an amount I would never have dreamed of in my 30s. I now give about 30% of my income away each year, which is joyous. Bonus. It is so easy now compared to when I started. With a single click, you can buy the entire global economy. That is mind-blowing. Story 50. I say the "I do not need it" move, which is the hardest because sometimes you just want it. For instance, I could afford the upgraded Canon lens, did not need it, but could theoretically afford it. I made a deal with myself that when the camera made the difference in profit, I would get it. Gratefully, I have 2 now. I waited and it was worth it. Story 51. I set a low water mark in my checking account of $3,000, which is equivalent to 1 month of bills. Every 2 weeks, when my direct deposit arrives, I balance the account and move any amount over $3,000 into savings. Sometimes it is $12, sometimes $200, and sometimes 0, but every 2 weeks I try to save. Story 52. Auto-depositing as high a percentage of each paycheck as I could to a savings account honestly worked wonders for spending control. Seeing it grow over time has turned it into such a stress relief. Story 53. $400 for a top-tier home inspector in 2009. They found massive damage in a Baltimore townhome and allowed us to walk away. 18 months later, my employer closed the office and I was made redundant. Without the loan, I was able to look for new employment nationwide during a difficult market. It took 5 years, but I ended up buying a first home in the Mountain West that has appreciated 3 times while the original townhome in the city is barely above my original offer. Story 54. Using the government-issued bill after my enlistment, I was able to complete undergraduate and graduate school with just one small $8,000 student loan thanks to my service. Story 55. I started playing World of Warcraft over 20 years ago. It has saved me thousands of dollars that I would have spent on other games since then. Story 56. I purchased my first home, a 2-family brick home, in 2012 with 3% down. I lived in the bottom-level apartment for 10 years and rented out the upstairs apartment. Story 57. Buying an electric car. I was spending $650 a month on gasoline. Switching to an electric vehicle with home charging meant that all that money went to car payments. However, I did not consider road trips or helping drive for kids' teams. Once the car was paid off, things really got amazing. Story 58. Understanding Bitcoin made me unlearn everything I thought I knew about money, value, and how the government controls the system. It is a total game changer. Story 59. Like many people, I accumulated credit card debt. I was fortunate to pay it off, and since around 1984, I have paid my credit card balances in full each month. Besides that, I invested a significant portion of my savings, which has kept me financially stable so far. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.